Hi guys, I would like to welcome you all in today's session wherein we'll be talking about MBA CET 2022, complete analysis of all the slots and the details of normalization. What is normalization of scores? Why is it required? How is it done? We'll explain that as well. So without much further ado, let's start with the video. Alright, so guys this year CET happened across 5 slots. 5 slots में एग्जाम हुई थी. On 23rd August, there was only one slot, the afternoon slot. On 24th August, there were 2 slots, morning and afternoon. And similarly, on 25th August, there were 2 slots, morning and afternoon slots. So I have shared the details with you across slots as to how was the paper, how many questions were asked, what was the difficulty level. Now, if you look at a slot 1, okay? Slot 1 mein there were 45 questions on quant. Ideally they were supposed to be 50 but 50 I nahi the, there were only 45 questions. LR, surprisingly the weightage was very high. Rather than 75 there were 80 questions. Verbal ability there were 50 questions and abstract reasoning there were on an average 25 questions. The level of difficulty was very easy. Now we had a word with a lot of students who were in slot 1. Generally, students attempted around 150, 160 or even 170 questions. So, average number of attempts were around 160 to 170, which is very high as far as CET is concerned. Now, this was possible only because the slot was very easy. Also, one more thing I would like to inform you all is that this year, all the slots had jumbled papers. So you did not have questions coming section wise as to LR aa raha hai pehle, fir quant aa raha hai. That was not how the paper appeared. The paper was completely scattered, jumbled. So agar question number 1 quant aa raha hai, question number 2 logic aa raha hai, question number 3 again quant, then again logic, again verbal, abstract. It was a completely random order. Okay. Now if you look at slot number 2, which was on 24th of August in the morning, this was considered as the most difficult slot amongst all the 5 slots. ये सबसे ज़्यादा difficult था. इसमें quant के around 50 to 55 questions थे. Majority questions were focused on a chapter called numbers. तो बहुत सारे questions थे numbers पे. However, quant was easy. But 85 questions were there in logical reasoning and there were around 6 to 7 puzzles. And puzzles ka difficulty level was high, which made the slot very difficult. Verbal was also moderate and abstract reasoning was easy to moderate. So this was the most difficult slot across all the slots. So after speaking to a few students, we realized that a good student could attempt only between 140 to 150 questions. Now imagine 160 to 117 slot 1 and 140 to 115 slot 2, it's a huge difference. Every mark changes your percentile by quite a bit. So this was a huge difference. Now in slot 3, which was the afternoon slot, this was considered as moderate to difficult. It was not completely moderate. It was on the higher side. So it was moderate to difficult. Quant had around 70 questions. So if you see the weightage of quant is generally increasing. Logic was 70, verbal was 50 and around 13 questions of abstract reasoning. Now, abstract reasoning generally is considered to be a very easy section and many students are very comfortable with this section. However, they had reduced the number of abstract reasoning questions across slots. So, because of this, some easy questions which could have been asked in abstract reasoning weren't there and they had distributed the questions across other sections. This slot, difficult, moderate to difficult. So, a good student would have attempted anything between 150 to 160 in this slot. Now, if you talk about slot 4, which was on 25th August morning, this was the easiest slot. मतलब slot 1 तो easy था ही, but slot 4 भी काफी easy था. ठीक है, quant में around 55 to 60 questions थे and there were very basic questions. बहुत easy questions थे, एकदम low level के questions थे. So just by looking at certain options, आप directly answer mark कर सकते थे, उस level के questions थे. Even logical reasoning was very, very easy. There were barely any puzzles asked. So they were all standalone questions और बहुत easy questions थे. Verbal also was very, very straightforward, 55 to 60 questions, and abstract reasoning had 15 questions. A good student was able to attempt anything between 165 to 175 questions in this slot. Now understand, now 165 to 175 is a huge chunk of questions, and this would definitely take your score, your percentile to a very high value. Okay, and slot 5 was your 25th August afternoon slot. This was my slot. I gave the exam in this slot. It was very quant extensive. इसमें बहुत सारे quant के questions थे. Around 75 questions were there on quant. LR, logical reasoning, had less questions, 55 to 60. Verbal ability had something between 50 to 55 questions, and abstract reasoning was 12 to 14 questions. I would consider the difficulty level between easy to moderate, because in this section quant was easy. However, verbal reasoning and abstract reasoning was kind of moderate, and verbal was especially moderate to difficult. Okay, so a good student could have attempted anything between 150 to 160. That could have been a good, genuine attempt for slot 5. Now, let me explain you the details of slot 5, which was the last slot of the exam in details. If you talk about slot 2, day 3, this was the last slot of the exam. I am giving you a complete detailed analysis of this slot as to how many questions had come from each section and how was the difficulty level like. Now, if you see in my slot, इस slot में सिर्फ 3 to 4 puzzles ही आए थे. बहुत ज़्यादा puzzles थे ही नहीं इसमें. तो puzzles का difficulty level भी काफी easy था. ऐसे नहीं था कि बहुत challenging puzzles थे या बहुत ज़्यादा time लग रहा था. ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं था. काफी easy questions थे, easy puzzles थे. But इसमें एक puzzle था जो cubes पे था. So cubes are painted by different colors, and then you are cutting the cube. So cubes made a comeback in this slot. फिर एक matrix based puzzle था कि you have people from different countries, वो कुछ game खेल रहे हैं. So you had to identify who is from which country and playing which game. उसके अलावा एक puzzle था which was a hexagonal table. So just like your circular arrangement, there was a hexagonal table. It was also pretty easy. And there was one puzzle on ranking. So you had to arrange the people as per their ranks and all. So easy level puzzles थे, ज़्यादा difficult नहीं था. Inequalities was not observed between slot 1 to slot 4. कहीं पे भी नहीं था. But last slot में inequalities आया था and there were 4 questions. It was a set. ठीक है. And इसका difficulty level was high. It was not very straightforward. It was time consuming and difficulty level काफी high था. Critical reasoning made a comeback and it had around 12 to 14 questions. इतने सारे questions और कोई भी slot में critical reasoning के ऊपर नहीं आए थे, but last slot में आए थे. Now critical reasoning had questions like assumptions, conclusions, then assertions, reasons. Those kind of questions were a part of critical reasoning. Direction sense, standalone questions थे. Direction sense के 3 से 4 questions थे. They were easy. Blood relations was also easy, not very, very difficult. It was pretty manageable and within a minute you could manage each of the questions. Code, number series. Yes, guys. Number series के there were 8 to 9 questions. So these were quite many questions. If you look at compared to other topics, इसका weightage काफी high था. Most of the number series questions were very easy. So basic logic of multiplication, squares, cubes, differences, उसी पे majority questions थे और ये काफी easily solvable questions थे. Coding decoding had 3 to 4 questions. They were also pretty easy. They could have been managed very easily within a minute. And there was a section which talked about the number of triangles. So for example, आपको ऐसा कुछ shape दिया है, ऐसे कुछ shape दिया है, something like this. And they are asking you कि इसमें कितने सारे triangles हैं. Not exactly this shape, but similar shapes दिए थे, and they asked you कि total number of triangles क्या है. तो इस पे 2 questions आए थे. ठीक है, so logical reasoning would be considered in the category of easy to moderate. Easy because of standalone questions and moderate because of critical reasoning. ठीक है. Now let's look at the next section, which is quantitative aptitude. Quantitative aptitude, like I told you, it was a quant intensive paper. Too many questions on quant, like 75 questions on quant it's not that कि देखो the questions were not very difficult, but क्या होता है ना, when you have a lot of quant questions coming up, you tend to become mentally exhausted, क्योंकि इतने सारे calculations कर रहे हो जल्दी 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 जल्दी, तो वो थोड़ा mind saturate हो जाता है. तो this was a quant intensive paper. Time and work के 3 to 4 questions थे. They were manageable questions, not very tedious. Number systems was asked in a huge chunk. बहुत सारे क्वेश्चन थे, 13 to 15 questions on number systems were asked. अभी number systems में topics like HCF, LCM, prime numbers, cofactors, factors, बहुत सारे क्वेश्चन थे. फैक्टोरियल के ऊपर क्वेश्चन था, then remainder theorem पे था, if this plus this then divided by 17, what is the remainder? तो बहुत सारे questions थे number systems पे. So if you were good with number systems, this was very scoring. लेकिन अगर number systems अच्छा नहीं था, then it would have given you a very tough time. Now time and distance, 5 to 7 questions, but they were pretty easy questions. मतलब सीधा तुमको time दिया है, speed दिया है, distance पूछा है, and vice versa. So those kind of questions were asked. Averages, manageable questions. Percentages, अपने normal percentage questions. One value is increased by 20%, then increased by 30%. What is the percentage increase? Those kind of questions were asked in percentages. Profit and loss भी selling price दिया था, profit percent दिया था, cost price पूछा था, and those kind of straight questions. Partnership was also manageable, easy था. Probability भी easy था. Card picking पे questions थे, जो आपका cards रहता है कि 2 cards are already picked up, third card क्या आएगा, those kind of questions easy था. Simple compound interest पे भी around a couple of questions were there, straightforward, just apply the formula, answer आ जाता, उस type के questions थे. Ratios, yes, I think around 3 to 4 questions were asked on ratios, and ratios was easy. थोड़ा सा equations form करना पड़ रहा था, ratios देखने पड़ रहे थे, but it was manageable. So I am not saying that quant was difficult, but too many quant questions was definitely very exhaustive. And the biggest surprise here was there was not a single DI set. Yes guys, in these 75 questions, एक भी DI का question नहीं था, so which was very surprising. So completely quant standalone questions थे, जिसकी वजह से वो थोड़ा time consuming था. ठीक है, there was no data sufficiency in my slot, no DI. Other slots had data sufficiency, they had DI, but this slot had none of those. ठीक है. Similarly, if you talk about topics like syllogisms, which is a very favorite topic in logical reasoning, that was not at all there in my slot. Now, next one, verbal ability. Yes, I would consider this section to be moderate to difficult. This section was pretty challenging. It was not very straightforward like logic or quant. Now here there were 3 to 4 RCs, and around the total number of questions were 12 to 15. The problem was the language of certain RCs was pretty high, and I think one of the RCs was like a cat level RC. It was based on Greek architecture and everything, and it was pretty lengthy. So reading the RC and then answering the questions, it was tedious. Vocabulary, 14 to 15 questions. Yes, there are 14 to 15 questions, pure vocabulary questions. They are asking you what is the synonym of the given word, what is the antonym of the given word. So those kind of things. So if you were good with your vocab, then answering these questions was a piece of cake. But agar vocabulary acha nahi hai, then this was difficult. Then analogy questions. Yes, so I'll give you an example. The example is like deforestation is related to trees. Right? Deforestation is related to trees. Similarly, what is related to what? And the options were pretty confusing. Like for example, sterilization to microorganisms and something of that sort, something to vaccine, those kind of things. So you had to figure out the reasoning as to how is deforestation and tree related and what logic can you apply amongst the given options. That way, analogy. So that was an example of analogy. Root words, yes. Now, root words were asked in the sense that, you know, if they gave you a word, let's say obvious. Okay? Obvious is a word. We know the meaning, obvious ka word meaning sabko pata hi rehta hai. But the question was, this is derived from which language? Is it a Greek word? Is it a Latin word? Is it a French word? Those kind of things. So 2 to 3 questions were asked on this, ki this is derived from which language. So honestly, I wasn't that aware of where is this derived from, so it became difficult for me to answer. Match the pairs were there. Yes, there was many match the pair questions as far as verbal ability was concerned, and you had a couple of fill in the blank questions as well. So it was like a moderate to difficult section compared to all other sections. Similarly, if you talk about abstract reasoning, I would say it was easy to moderate. Certain questions were pretty manageable. Some questions were tedious. I'll tell you the reason why. Series questions were around 7 to 8. The reason why this was tedious is because there were around 7 to 8 frames. 7-8 shapes दिए थे. Then you had to identify कि next shape कौन सा होगा. तो वो 7-8 frames का pattern identify करना and then figure out करना was kind of tedious. However, few questions were like that, but most of the questions were easily manageable. There was this new category called complete the figure. मतलब आपको एक ऐसा figure दिया है. Let's say for example, this had some shape, some diagram. This had some diagram. यहाँ पे कुछ diagram है. You had to figure out कि इधर क्या आएगा. Obviously इतना easy नहीं था, थोड़ा सा lengthy था, and you had to complete the figure. And various colorful shapes were also given. So you had to interpret the color also. कौन सा color किधर जाएगा? How will the shape look like? So various colorful figures were also given, and there were 2 to 3 analogy questions. So 2 frames are related. Identify the logic और check करो कौन से option में वो logic follow हो रहा है. So 2 to 3 questions were based on analogy. So this section was around easy to moderate, not very time consuming. Yes guys, this was all about the last slot detailed analysis for MBA CET 2022. So I hope you would have got a proper idea as to how are you supposed to prepare for topics. I would just recommend one thing. Please don't leave any chapter, don't leave any topic, because you never know कि how many questions will come for any topic. अभी जैसे number system पे 13 to 15 questions, it's a huge weightage. तो अगर number system छोड़ दिया तो straight आपके 15 question minus हो जाते हैं. ठीक है, तो फिर don't leave any topic और एकदम अच्छे से prepare करो so that कोई भी topic के कितने भी questions आए, you should be able to solve it. Next, yes. So now the thing is, like I told you, the difficulty level was pretty different in different slots. Now because of this, slot 2 people started complaining that, you know, our slot was difficult. So obviously our scores will be lower. दूसरे slot का paper easy था, तो scores high होंगे. So that is the reason DTE has released a notification on their website, wherein they have specified that they will be following the Equi percentile method. So they've given you the formula also as to how will they calculate the Equi percentile. So basically this will be used to normalize every slot. So for example, let's say slot 1 was very easy. वहाँ पे a student A scores 165. Let's say slot 2 is very difficult and a student scores 140. So अगर वो student A at 165, if that person is getting like let's say a 99.99 percentile, so this person at a score of 140 might get 99.99 percentile. So it would be almost similar. ठीक है, तो that is how they are going to normalize the scores so that it's a fair deal. कि no matter whether your paper was easy, it was difficult, you will be compared with the topper of your slot. ठीक है, आपका slot का जो भी topper score रहेगा, उससे you will be compared and you will be given a percentile accordingly. So that is what DT is going to do, and this process is called as normalization. So guys, this was all about the details of MBA CET 2022, the analysis as well as the Equi percentile. If you have any queries, you can mention them in the comment section below. We'll try to answer your queries as soon as possible. And until then, thank you so much. Bye-bye. Take care.